Hi, everyone, and welcome to Make Business Better from Quartz. I'm Zach Seward, co-founder and CEO of Quartz, and every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, I'm talking with business leaders who are willing to come on and share tips from the ways in which they're working to improve their slice of business. And we try to focus on the practical advice that all of us can then apply in our own lives and jobs. For today's episode, we're going to be talking about breaking through the common impediments to progress on diversity and inclusion. And our guest for that is InaMarie Johnson, who's the Chief People and Diversity Officer at Zendesk. In the next 15 minutes, we'll give you the Quartz essentials on barriers to achieving meaningful progress in D&I in the workplace. We'll bring in InaMarie, who to share her insights and expertise on the topic, and hopefully give as much practical advice as we can for everyone who's tuning in to take away on their own. And we'll take viewer questions too. If you've got them, just place them in the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll start, as always, with the Quartz Essentials. It's a big day for Quartz Essentials in the QZ.com world. We launched a product by the same name and with a similar vein on Quartz. You can go check it out. But for today's conversation, I wanted to highlight a study that was done in February of 2020 by the Center for Talent Innovation, which Quartz wrote about in our field guide last year on building anti-racist companies. And I want to hone in on one particular question that was asked of a group defined as majority men, which are white, straight, cis men in white collar jobs. Basically, the contrast I'm highlighting here, and I thought was pretty striking from the study, was at least when asked, folks in this demographic, which of course includes myself, said they were extremely willing and eager to participate in D&I initiatives. But of course, just anecdotally, but surveys also support, when you look around at the companies, that doesn't tend to be the case. It doesn't tend to hold up. And when asked why white men in the workplace were not as willing or not as eager to actually get involved in D&I initiatives at work, the top reasons they cited were, one, that doesn't benefit me, and two, I'm too busy. Which are honestly pretty depressing responses, no doubt, but I think important ones for us to confront. We're nearing the 1-year anniversary of George Floyd's murder and all of the important protests and movements that followed from that. Obviously, last year, there was a flurry of activities in so many different companies, acknowledging their failures on diversity and inclusion and vowing to improve. But as we now approach this year later mark, as we've been talking about in other episodes, I think it's important we take stock about not just like what progress has been made, but what's not working. And then today I was hoping to focus on those impediments and more importantly, getting past the common impediments to diversity, inclusion, and equity initiatives at work. And for that, we've got the perfect guest. Who we should bring in right now. InaMarie Johnson, as I said before, is the Chief People and Diversity Officer at Zendesk. She joined Zendesk in 2018 and oversees the company's diversity, equity, and inclusion functions, as well as workplace experience, talent acquisition, and development. Before joining Zendesk, you were SVP and Chief Human Resources Officer at Plantronics, which is an audio communications company. InaMarie, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm delighted to be here, and good morning for me and good afternoon for you, Zach.
Thanks so much. Before we get into today's topic, the Quartz announced, I'm very excited to say that we're going to be opening optionally our New York City office very soon, but I am still for the moment working from home. You're working from home. So we'll continue our tradition in this show of asking our guests to just share something in your work from home space before we get started on today's topic, if you're willing.
Absolutely. I am still working from home. I'm in Southern California. By the way, your background looks great. I think I told you that. One thing I love about my background, I'm an avid gardener, and that's kept me sane during all of this working from home. So flowers from my garden there, really keep me happy and as I said, sane, and it just allows me to bring a little bit of the outside in. So that's one thing I love, and trying to just change it up week after week. We have to do these little things to keep us excited.
That resonates with me. As you know, last year in early pandemic, I also got into gardening really more for the first time in my life, and really enjoyed it. Now though, as spring is reemerging, I turned out I got overly ambitious, and a lot of plants are returning that need love and care, and I'm probably
It's a
not
real
the
job.
best
Yeah.
position to do that. Yeah.
It's a real job, but it's very therapeutic for me, I must say. I love it.
No, it was definitely what I needed too in pandemic times. But it now occurs to me that was not an intentional metaphor, but it is an appropriate metaphor. Where a year later, or after a flurry of activity in the gardens, I think a lot of companies are, or should be at least, facing the music on whether they've actually made the kind of progress they vowed to last summer. And I would love, what we're trying to do is talk to who are deeply involved in this kind of work and insights, not just what's working, but also what's not. And so appreciate your coming on to talk about this. I'll start with a broad question, which is the right place for DEI in a company, per your view. It's interesting, your title, Chief People and Diversity Officer. I noticed a lot of evolution in titles for folks in the DEI field over the last several years. You see everything from like really centralized HR work on DEI to employee committees. And I'm curious to get your perspective on like what of these what kinds of these functions within a company, at least company like the size of Zendesk, tend to work best?
Yeah, it's a great question. Firstly, I'm glad it's top of mind for a lot of people. Just even you asking, like, where should it exist in a company, and who should be involved. I think what the last year and a half, well, it feels like, has done for us is it's put it top of mind for a lot of people at all levels in the organization, which is interesting because my role is really two roles put together. So I started off with Zendesk in 2018 as the very first Chief People Officer. The company was about 4 years post public, going public company, and really decided it wanted a first Chief People Officer. In 2019, interestingly, I started to think about, as we were on our path to being $1 billion in revenue, like, I want diversity, equity, and inclusion to be in all of the conversations I'm in. So I'm going to take on the Chief Diversity Officer role as well as the Chief People Officer. So really it's two roles, and it ensures that whether I'm sitting at the top with our CEO team or I'm sitting with an employee community group, we are having the conversations that are so important. But we subscribe to a belief, Zach, that it is really leader-led. It's not my team that is leading the diversity, equity, and inclusion work and practices. It is leader-led, which means my team is coming up alongside or underneath and really equipping. And one thing I'm pretty proud of that Zendesk did is last year, in the middle of 2020, we decided, like, we're going to step up our efforts. We've been on the journey like many other companies, but we realized that we needed to do more. And we actually put the diversity, equity, and inclusion work through the same rigor that our other 5 company strategies went through. So we had investment conversations, we had resourcing conversations, we now have metrics. And I think that allows it to really become the red thread that's going through a lot, and not some type of initiative that is setting off to the side owned by HR.
When you say it should be leader-led, do you mean it's got to come from the top, from the CEO, or it's the responsibility of each department to embed DEI into everything they're doing, or I assume it's both, but
I was going
give
to
me some
say,
more
yeah.
detail on what leader-led actually means in
Yeah,
practice.
it is definitely meant to say it starts with leaders at the top, what we say, what we do, how we set our priorities. Definitely, it needs to be, threaded in at that top. But it's also so much about the people manager. We have about 1,000 people managers. I have about 4,500 employees. We're global, in
Mhm.
APAC, EMEA, and the Americas. So it can't just be something that is only with senior leaders, because the people come to work virtually every day. They care about the type of manager that they work with. And so I want that average people manager who's sitting in London or Copenhagen or Singapore to be thinking about, am I creating a diverse, inclusive, and equitable team environment where all of my, colleagues can thrive and grow, not just exist, but really thrive and grow.
What are some of the biggest challenges if you got 1,000 people managers at the company? I would imagine that that's a lot more difficult to get everybody on the same page and feeling supported than, say, the senior leadership of the company. What are some of the biggest challenges and to that, and how are you trying to address them?
Yep. I think equipping is the biggest challenge. The average people manager reminds me of your survey you showed. A lot of times people will start with, well, I'm not sure I'm going to say the right thing, or I might say the wrong thing, or I didn't know. And so we talk about the idea of just understanding who your team is and being present with what the wider environment for that team member is, not just what's happening in business hours, right? We're all, working inside of our homes, as you said, etc. So understanding that wider lens that your employee is going through, we sort of refer to that as empathy, virtual empathy, understanding what it might be like to be in your employee's shoes. And then creating an environment where you take that into consideration, as I said, as you're setting priorities and goals. So the goal is equipping leaders. We put all of those people leaders last year through anti-racism training. We felt like that was an important foundational piece to understand language that is inclusive and language that can be exclusive. And
Mhm.
for the most part, people managers found that really helpful. We also have what we refer to as an always on model, meaning you can go to our lab. It's our development and training portal and get those courses again, or get tips, get information that will help you. And then maybe I think one of the biggest equipping pieces that people managers love is they have HR and diversity, equity, and inclusion partners. So for our more senior people managers that are actually leading teams, being able to sit with that sort of subject matter expert and plan out, how are you going to work on things like your hiring practices? How are you going to make sure that your team dynamics are inclusive? And then just having that partner be there to kind of give you feedback perspective along the way. So those are some of the ways that we're finding that we can really equip our people managers, so that we go back to that leader led, right? No one wants to
Yeah.
lead if they're not equipped.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Um, well, that makes a lot of sense. One of the things you mentioned in there that with 2020 review, it sounds like for Zendesk, was establishing metrics for DEI initiatives. I'd be curious to hear more about how you approach that, and what in the end you established as the KPIs.
Yeah. You're right, because what gets measured gets done. That's what I always say. It kind of goes back to, I spent a decade at a very large multinational Honeywell, and Six Sigma environment. And if I learned anything from those 10 years, is you have to have metrics just like you do for any other part of your business. So through that strategy process that I talked about, we also set up what would be our OKRs, objectives and key results. Firstly, hiring. You can't talk about an inclusive and belonging environment if the environment and the people in it all look very much the same. So it does start with hiring. It can't end. I like to say you can't hire your way to greatness, but it does matter what type of representation you have in the company. So we set up our hiring goals to be to increase our representation of some of our underrepresented groups. In software, which is the type of company we are, that means a lot of Black, brown, underrepresented, even females, especially in engineering. So we have specific goals around those. And in many cases, we are going to different pools of talent. One of the ways that we've been able to increase our representation is by going remote. 40% of our roles are no longer established in a location. They're open, and that means we can go to different talent pools for those roles. We also realized one of the things I love about Zendesk is we're pretty humble. We talk about this thing that we call humbledent. It's a made-up word, and it means humble and a little bit confident. And so in order to get great diverse talent, we realized we needed to build up some partnerships, because there are some search firms that actually have better attraction and sourcing than we did. So we partnered quite a bit. And being able to then get more diverse talent has allowed us to deliver in that hiring space. We call it inclusion in action. It means that final slate that we choose from has to have at least 2 diverse and underrepresented candidates before we make the decision. And one thing I'm pretty proud about, Zach, is at this point in time, I am hiring about 8 times the amount of females that I'm losing, and about 4 to 5 times the amount of underrepresented groups. And you might say, like, why do I care about measuring it that way? Because I had a leaky bucket in 2019. I was actually hiring, but then losing. So putting that focus on retaining what you hire is definitely one of the metrics. So quite a bit in the hiring space. The only other metric I'll mention, because it's the harder one, is inclusion. And so we did last year at the end of 2020, we did a baseline of our inclusion environment. How inclusive is the environment around decision-making, around psychological safety, around involving diverse perspectives? And out of a score of 100, we had a baseline of about 82.
And that sorry, to be clear, this is a survey of your employees.
Exactly. Yes. Okay. So asking them to rate the environment for inclusion, so that, again, we could get that baseline, and then we could look at what type of improvements and areas do we need to focus on to keep the environment being more inclusive and more belonging. That one's a lot harder. And the reason it's hard is because the more you shift the environment to be diverse, the harder it is to keep that baseline either the same or even getting better. Because right now that baseline is on a fairly still homogeneous group. So that's something that we're continuing to keep focus on.
There's so much in all of the metrics you were just rattling off that resonates with me. I'll just pick a quick few one. We've switched to all of our jobs being remote by default, as opposed to being listed in New York by default, and it's very, very clear that it both improved the quality of the applicant pool and has improved the diversity of the applicant pool. And it's just it's been striking just how dramatically that's happened. And then our rule for finalist pools is similar to yours, in that it needs to include at least 2 people who identify as women and 2 people of color. It's possible, obviously, to be both. And it's, for us, part of the reason for that particular rule, and 2 as opposed to 1, is the research is very clear that you end up tokenizing applicants of color if it's just 1 in the finalist pool, even if they're the best qualified person in the pool. And so wanted to avoid that. So I just to add some color to our
totally agree. It's a tipping point, right? Like there is truth about a tipping point when you have more than one. I mean, there is truth also on the other end that says somebody's got to be first, and we need those pioneers and those people who are brave and courageous to step in environments. At different points in my career, I was definitely the only one or definitely the first, but it can't end there. It's the beginning. And that's why for us, you're right, the inclusion in action was about volume, like at least two, preferably more. And I just want to say, you may have heard, we recently announced a new CFO. Our CFO, after 5 years helping us grow the company, is moving on. And even with my CEO in doing this search, he and I and the search firm, we were committed to this inclusion in action. And that's pretty hard to do in the CFO space. We all know that's not necessarily, publicly traded company CFO where you find underrepresented talent. But when you're committed and you're really using your partners to leverage sourcing, you can get there.
Well, good luck with the search, and totally
We're
agree.
done.
Right?
We're done. We announced.
Perfect. Congratulations.
We have a new CFO joining
on the great new hire. Sure. The I think it's when it's particularly difficult that any of these principles are truly put to the test. When it's easy, it's sort of obviously it kind of belies the point. I want to return to the last point you made earlier about measuring inclusion. You made a number of observations there I thought were really important, and that, again, it resonates with me in our company, where the company culture emerged, was set initially by several white men who founded the company, including myself. Mm-hmm. And there's a way in which you can build a really strong company culture that everyone feels attached to, and get a 95 on the score on that question surveyed staff about, but only because it's, as you said, a homogenous group. And I could see a company succeeding at becoming a more inclusive culture for everyone at the company, but in doing so, having a less, singular or a singularly dominant culture that you could describe it. This is exactly how it, what it means to work at Zendesk or work at Quartz. So there's a bit of a tension there. I definitely prefer the latter version of that, but I don't, but I could see that 750 actually being indication of progress. Am I all base there?
I think you're spot on. There's so much we could talk about in that culture space, but I'll make a few points. In order for someone to belong, this is my way I think about it, and I think a lot of the research shows, if you're going to belong to a culture and really find that you can bring your whole self to it and really thrive, then it has to have been created with you in mind. And so a lot of the cultures of software companies in the very beginning, let's face it, I'm not sure they were really created with underrepresented talent in mind, which means you can't fall in love with your culture. It's not this fixed thing that you protect. You protect, of course, the good things, but I'll go back to my flowers and my gardening analogy. I tell people all the time, it's about cultivating. It's about trading out the things that are no longer serving you well, or your, new talent pool, and bringing in the new things. That's how you're going to get true belonging, because then the culture has been designed with different people in mind. We're evolving all the time. Another space is our transgender colleagues. I'm not sure I can say that at the very beginning, those colleagues and whatever their identities and needs are were thought of. That's another, perspective. So we're trying to cultivate the culture. And something else that we're looking at, Zach, is broadening the definition of diversity, so that we take on different identities and people really are able to see themselves in the culture and in those elements of inclusion. And that's a process that's building. It's new and fresh all the time. I'm learning. I go through training. I, put myself in environments that are different so that I can grow. So I think you're right. We can never hold on and expect the culture to be the same. And is that a little bit scary for some? And, yeah, it really is. But that's where the growth happens. In that tension is really where we all grow and discover new things.
Totally. It's been a big learning experience for myself, for sure. Well, in the time we have remaining, I wanted to come back to one other thing you said, because it's come up in a few of our other episodes, and I'm getting really interesting, helpful responses. You talked about some of the training you do for people managers at Zendesk and referred to it as anti-racism training. And that caught my ear because there's been a bit of a renewed backlash against implicit bias training lately. For viewers, I know there's for viewers' sake, the critique is that it sort of lets people off the hook. We all have biases. We just need to recognize what they are, and instead of trying to address those the biases themselves. Anyway, I will leave. I'll stop talking because what I'm curious to hear is what your philosophy is on this, and if I'm correct to perceive there's maybe a different spin on that kind of traditional training that Zendesk has taken.
Yeah. I mean, let me go back to why anti-racism. I think, in the middle of 2020, it was so important for all of us to do the personal work. And the personal work sometimes just starts with awareness. What's the background? What's the history of people that are different than I am? Our company was founded by people that, weren't even American. They were from Copenhagen, Denmark. And so just really wanting to open the lens for our people managers was goal number one. As for, bias, absolutely. There's bias in all of us and in the work. So we do continue to make sure people managers have that perspective, but we don't just stop there. I think that's been some of the criticism, that it's not enough to just acknowledge it. It's like action. What are you going to do about it? And one of the trainings that we're really excited about now is around psychological safety. And the reason is because that is very action oriented. What are you going to do to create an environment where people, number one, don't have the fear of bringing their whole selves into the environment, and there's freedom to speak, to have a point of view, etc. So I think my philosophy is simple: awareness and action together, I think, is what really moves the needle. And that's what we'll continue to be focused on.
Fair to say you're not taking the Coinbase approach to bringing your whole self to work, it sounds like.
I will not comment on Coinbase. Let's just say, yeah, we're in a different space. But I mean, it's not easy, right? We all wanna do better, and there's opportunities, and who knows? One thing I like to say is we got to give the grace and the space for people to make some mistakes, because that is going to happen. And we never want to be too, confident to think we're going to get it all right.
That's for sure, and a good note to end on. InaMarie, thank you so much for joining us and
thank you,
sharing your
Zach.
insights.
Yeah, thank you for having us. We really appreciate being able to share our story.
Our pleasure. Thanks.
Okay.
That's it for today's episode. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back here, as always, next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, where our guest will be Dennis Woodside, the president of Impossible Foods. I'll see you then. Bye.